The day our son Leon was born, my husband, Judge Evander Ashton, asked to sleep in separate beds. For the sake of our son's future, I won't divorce you. But don't expect anything beyond that. From that day on, even if I collapsed right in front of him, he wouldn't reach out or touch me for even a second. His political rivals searched relentlessly for scandal, but all they found was that in 10 years of marriage, we had never kissed, held hands, or embraced in public. When questioned about the apparent lack of affection in our marriage, he offered only a brief response. Intimacy is a private matter. The internet praised him for his discipline and respect toward his wife. Only I knew what it meant to spend 10 years sleeping alone. Then our son was bullied at school. Leon ended up in the ICU with a brain bleed and a fractured rib. Yet Evander, the judge, didn't push for an immediate trial. Instead, hiding behind the guise of judicial impartiality, he delayed again and again. Devastated, I rushed home, only to overhear a conversation between him and a close friend. "Evan, if your wife finds out you're stalling because the kid who beat up Lenny is your ex's son, she'll divorce you for sure. She won't find out." Just 4 careless words sharp enough to pierce straight through my heart. So this was the truth. His famed impartiality was nothing but a facade. The scales in his heart had long since tipped in someone else's favor. It was the height of summer, yet a chill ran through me. Inside the study, Evander's voice remained steady and emotionless. Even if she did find out, she wouldn't dare leave. He was right. Since Leon's birth, I had accepted a loveless marriage just to keep our family intact. Evander knew this. He knew how deeply I loved him and how unwilling I was to let go. His friend let out a mocking laugh. "Unbelievable, Evan. It's been years since high school, and you still haven't gotten over Tiana Shaw. That bad girl was the only blemish on your spotless record. I still remember when you two got caught kissing in the teacher's office. During the disciplinary announcement, she asked you in front of the entire school whether her lipstick tasted good. I nearly laughed myself to death. Their laughter rang on and on. My face drained of all color. Got caught kissing? I had never imagined that word could be associated with someone like Evander, so composed, so restrained, so righteous. The thought that the same man who disinfected his hands after merely brushing against mine had once secretly entangled himself with another woman in the hidden corners of a school made my stomach churn. Nausea surged up my throat. I rushed to the bathroom and retched until nothing came up but bile. Since Leon was injured, I hadn't been able to eat or sleep. Every day, I ran back and forth between police stations and government offices. Yet Evander, Leon's own father, had the leisure to sit there reminiscing about his high school romance. It was absurd, utterly absurd. When I came out of the bathroom, only Evander remained in the study. His gaze swept over my swollen eyes and pale face. He pressed his lips together and spoke evenly. "The evidence is disputed, so the court date has to be postponed. Panicking won't help." The same excuse again. I clenched my fists, a deep cold settling in my chest. Had I not overheard that conversation, I would still be completely in the dark. I stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the study. "Evander, what will it take for the case to go to trial?" Evander frowned. Before he could deflect again, I let out a hollow laugh. "If you move forward with the hearing, I'll divorce you." For a brief moment, he looked stunned, almost pleased. Then his expression darkened. "Jocelyn, if the families of law enforcement officials all resorted to threats and manipulation for personal gain like this, what justice would remain in the world? As for Lenny, he was probably bullied because he inherited your selfishness." I stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. He was the one abusing his power to protect his ex-lover's kid, yet he pinned the blame on Leon and me. I stepped forward to argue, but he was faster. With a sharp bang, he slammed the door shut. The sound echoed in my chest as I walked downstairs in a daze. My phone rang. It was Leon's attorney, Darren Bates. Like the lawyers before him, his voice was hesitant. "Ms. Rowe, I can't take this case. You'll have to find someone else." I tightened my grip on the phone until my knuckles turned white, biting down until I tasted blood. Mr. Bates, did someone put pressure on you? Ms. Rowe, please don't ask. The call ended abruptly, but I understood perfectly. In the entire legal world, who else but Evander had the power to make elite lawyers back away one after another? After a moment, I steadied myself and called Darren back. Mr. Bates, if you won't take the criminal case, you'll still take a civil one, won't you? I want you to represent me in a divorce. I arrived at the hospital and headed straight to Leon's room. He was finally out of the ICU, but he was still swathed in thick layers of gauze. He looked gaunt, his cheeks were hollowed out, and his skin was terrifyingly pale and fragile. When he saw me, his face brightened. He instinctively looked past my shoulder, checking the empty doorway, and the spark in his eyes instantly died. Mom? Dad's not coming. Lenny, sweetie, your dad is, well, he's still busy getting proof. You know, to make Sue, this book had been added on your bookshelf. I forced a soothing tone, even though grief weighed heavily on me. Just then, a shrill voice cut in from the hallway. Mrs. Ashton. I spun around. Tiana was standing there holding a basket of bruised fruit and a bouquet of white flowers. Leighton Sterling, the boy who had bullied Leon, was right next to her. Tiana and her son strolled into the room as they owned it. Finally caught you. Have you thought about the settlement we discussed? Leighton looked right at Leon and flipped him off, zero remorse on his face. Leon flinched, his eyes going wide with terror. My jaw clenched. I stepped between him and the door, blocking his view. Get out. Get the hell out of here. Tiana adopted a voice that was equal parts soothing and condescending. Mrs. Ashton, calm down. It was just a little roughhousing between boys. No need to blow this out of proportion. Tears stung my eyes. Roughhousing? My son has a broken rib and a brain bleed. He was in the ICU. You call that roughhousing? Tiana froze for a split second. I let out a cold laugh. You want to settle? Fine. Break one of your son's ribs, then we can talk. Before I could finish, Tiana grabbed Leighton, hugging him tight while glaring at me. But Leighton looked smug. Mom, didn't Mr. Evander Ashton say we don't have to be scared of her? He said he'd protect us. Hearing Evander's name snapped the last thread of my control. I slapped Leighton hard across the face. His wail filled the room instantly. You hit my son? You're dead. Tiana screamed. She grabbed a fistful of my hair and slapped me across the face, over and over. I had been short of breath lately anyway, and the blows made the room spin. I crumpled to my knees while she kept hitting me. From the bed, Leon was sobbing uncontrollably. Stop it. Stop hitting my mom. Mom. He was thrashing around so hard his stitches tore, and blood started seeping through the white gauze. By the time the police showed up, Tiana looked barely touched, aside from messy hair. I, on the other hand, was bruised, swollen, and hurting with every breath. At the station, I insisted on filing charges and getting a medical report. But the officers suddenly changed their tune. They ruled that Tiana had acted in defense of her son and demanded that I apologize. I stood up abruptly, handcuffs clattering against the table, but then I saw an officer speaking respectfully into his phone. My legs gave out. I collapsed back into the chair. Evander. It was Evander again. He really couldn't stand to see his old flame suffer even a little. My throat went tight, making it hard to swallow. I refused to apologize and was detained in a dim cell for 3 days. Every second was agony. Sometimes I thought back to that drunken night 10 years ago. I'd gotten pregnant, and Evander told me to keep the baby. He promised to marry me, to take care of us. I thought my unrequited love had finally been returned, but it was just a delusion. 3 days later, I walked out of the detention center, disheveled and dirty. I went straight to the hospital, only to find a strange elderly woman in Leon's VIP room. Leon had been moved to a general room. He threw himself into my arms, crying out his grievances. He threw himself into my arms, sobbing. Mom, Dad said I was bad at school and caused trouble, and that's why I got bullied. But I didn't. I was good. His crying caused actual physical pain in my chest. I tasted blood in my mouth and swallowed it down. After settling Leon, I stormed out of the room. As I passed the VIP room, I spotted a familiar figure. Evander. He was holding Leighton, Tiana's son, with practiced ease. The elderly woman in the bed placed Tiana's hand into his, speaking earnestly. Evan, Tia has had such a hard life. That man left her, and lay so early. Thank goodness she met you, or who knows how badly they would have been treated. Evander, who usually hated physical contact, didn't let go. His voice held a tenderness I had never heard before. Mrs. Shaw, don't worry. I promise to take good care of Tia and Lay. My heart felt numb. I raised my phone and recorded the happy family of 3. Evander, since you couldn't seem to let go of your old flame, I would give you a hand. 2 weeks later, the hearing was postponed again due to insufficient evidence. I'd expected it, but the news still stung. But Leon was going back to school today, his first day since leaving the hospital, so I forced myself to hold it together. At the school gates, he looked defeated. Mom, is Leighton really gonna get arrested? I shoved down my own sadness and held him tight. He will. I promise. Everyone who hurt you is going to be punished. Everyone. Including his own father, Evander. But barely a day later, it happened again. Leon was slapped across the face and forced to his knees. When I rushed to the hospital, Evander was there, rubbing his forehead and talking on his phone. Keep a lid on this for now. I stormed over and slapped him. Hard. He went quiet, stumbling back in shock, then glared at me. Can you stop being so emotional? Lenny is my son. I care about him more than anyone. I stood guard by the bed, screaming. Get out. Evander sighed. I'll make this right. But I was done listening to him. And I definitely didn't trust him. That afternoon, I went straight to the Department of Education and filed a formal complaint. Soon after, Leighton was pulled out of class for questioning. Tiana rushed to the hospital with Evander right behind her. The arrogance was gone. She looked helpless, dropping to her knees in front of me while Evander watched. Ms. Rowe, I apologize on my son's behalf. Please, withdraw the complaint. He's so young. He can't handle an interrogation, it'll traumatize him. I looked at Evander. I saw a flash of sympathy in his eyes before he hid it was ridiculous. Infuriating. His own son had been brutalized, yet he felt bad for the bully. Evander grabbed Tiana's arm and hauled her to her feet. He looked at me, his voice cold. Withdraw the complaint. I didn't back down. Not a chance. He took out his phone and sent a text. Less than a minute later, my boss called. Jocelyn, did you piss someone off? The prosecutor's office just notified us that you've been reported for tax evasion. Don't come into work for now. The line went dead, leaving a ringing in my ears. I stared at Evander in shock, but he just looked back calmly. You forced my hand. I couldn't go to jail. If I did, what would happen to Leon? Numbly, I withdrew the complaint. Tiana's son was released. Watching them hug in the distance looking for all the world like a happy family of 3, I felt a bitter sense of irony. 3 days passed. Evander broke his word again. The tax evasion charges weren't dropped, but I did get a termination notice from my company. And Tiana became his deputy. It was a prestigious position for a judge's deputy, yet he handed it to Tiana without a second thought. Blatant favoritism. I didn't even bother asking him about it this time. Evander offered an explanation anyway. Don't get the wrong idea. Tiana is a single mother. She needs the job. Unexpectedly, he hugged me from behind. A gesture I used to crave now just terrified me. I shoved him away, eyeing him warily, and let out a cold laugh. Evander, do you actually think this stops me from suing? Dream on. Evander stormed off. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Mr. Bates, the evidence is ready. Just before the trial, a video went viral. It had been edited to make my son look like the aggressor and Tiana's kid the victim. Overnight, the case became a sensation. People found my social media accounts and flooded them with abuse. Leon got suspended. I made call after call, but no one would help. For the first time, I felt the despair of being completely isolated. Then Evander called. It's not too late to drop the lawsuit. If you do, I can put everything back to how it was. His calm tone snapped something inside me. I screamed, on the verge of a breakdown. Evander, I hope you rot in hell. Are you even human? Lenny is your own son. How could you do this to him?
Silence.
Then a sigh. Jocelyn, I just wanted you to behave. You're too stubborn. I threw the phone across the room. Leon walked in, his face pale. Mom, did Dad abandon us? I wiped my tears and rushed to hold him. Lenny, it's okay. I'm here. You still have me. The video spread everywhere, even hitting our neighborhood chat group. Neighbors who used to be friendly avoided us completely. Some even splattered red paint on our doorstep, banged on the door, and screamed at us to get out of the complex. Evander didn't come home for the next 2 days. I sat there holding Leon, clutching a kitchen knife, facing the door. I didn't dare close my eyes. We lived in that terror until the day of the trial finally arrived. By the time I got Leon downstairs, reporters and onlookers were already swarming the apartment complex. The courthouse entrance was just as bad. People pelted us with eggs and rotting vegetables, screaming that we were getting exactly what we deserved. By the time I managed to shield Leon and get us inside, my clothes were smeared with foul-smelling yolk, and a nasty lump was already swelling on my forehead. That was when Evander and Tiana came in through a side door. Purchase completed. When our eyes met, he looked at me with pure disdain, like he was mocking me for thinking I stood a chance, for bringing this on myself. The courtroom gallery was packed. Because of the intense public interest, the proceedings were being live-streamed. As soon as the feed went live, the screen flooded with hate directed at Leon and me. Kids these days are so manipulative. He's the bully, but acts like the victim. Can't they lower the age for juvie and lock him up? Like mother, like son, she dodges taxes, and he bullies classmates. They really belong together. Mr. Ashton is so unlucky to be stuck with a wife and son like that. Up on the bench, Evander seemed to ignore the toxicity. He kept his expression calm as he banged the gavel to call for order. As the session formally began, Tiana presented the video that had gone viral. It showed Leon shouting vicious insults while hitting Leighton. In the gallery, Leighton clung to Tiana, playing the part of the terrified victim to perfection. Mommy, I'm scared. What did I do wrong? Why does he want to hurt me? Beside me, Leon jumped up, crying out in frustration. I didn't hit you. You hit me. Leon looked toward Evander, his face crumbling as he started to call out for his dad. Evander's face was cold as he brought the gavel down. Order. Leon flinched and slumped back into his seat. Tiana held a sobbing Leighton close. I only have one request. I just want them to apologize to my son and me. Her act worked. The online audience ate it up. Tiana is a saint. If someone bullied my kid, I wouldn't let it go so easily. The evidence is right there, and they still want to twist the truth? That little bastard is truly a bastard. Hurry up and put Jocelyn and her son in jail before they hurt anyone else. Meanwhile, whispers started circulating through the gallery. I know that woman. Mr. Ashton didn't want to marry her originally, but she drugged him and got pregnant to force her way in. Her son is just like her, scheming and manipulative. See? Her lawyer isn't even here. He must know she's bound to lose this case. Someone shouted impatiently. Apologize. That started a chain reaction. Soon, half the room was jeering, demanding that Leon and I apologize. Through it all, Evander sat high on the bench, looking down at me. After a long pause, he finally tapped the gavel. Plaintiff, do you have anything else to say? I didn't panic. I kept my face calm. Seeing my silence, Evander let out a small breath of relief. In that case, before he could finish, my lawyer burst into the courtroom. I smiled coldly and enunciated every word. Wait a moment, Your Honor. I have something to say. I request a change of defendant. Silence fell over the room. Evander, who usually remained unfazed, showed a crack of exhaustion. Plaintiff, on what basis are you acting? I spoke calmly. I believe my lawyer has made it clear enough. I want to change the defendant, or I cannot provide the evidence. This blatant threat unsettled Evander and set the gallery buzzing again. The livestream viewers were convinced this was a stalling tactic and spammed the chat like crazy. Why are you still pretending? Obviously, she has no evidence and is just trying to drag this out. How despicable. Just apologize to the defendant. Using her own son as a shield, how can she be so vicious? Your Honor, this is completely inappropriate. This is a courtroom, not her living room. I watched the arrogant comments scroll by without reacting. Years of grievances had numbed me. This pain was nothing compared to seeing Leon in the ICU or the loneliness of sleeping in an empty room for 10 years. Tiana suddenly stood up, wearing a perfectly calculated look of fragility. Ms. Rowe, I know you're angry. After all, Lenny was hurt, so it's only right that you blame me and Lay. It's okay if you don't want to apologize to me, I understand. But Lay is innocent. He's just a child, and now he cries every night because he's too scared to sleep. Just let Lenny say sorry to him, and we can drop this, okay? We'll never bother you and Lenny again. The fake kindness in her tone made my stomach turn. From the bench, Evander issued a command that allowed no argument. Jocelyn, that's enough. Stop playing these pointless games. Cooperate with the court immediately and stop wasting everyone's time. I looked up, meeting his cold gaze, and the corner of my mouth lifted in a faint sneer. He had always been this way, forever judging me as if he were superior, while forgetting that he was the one acting unfairly. Cooperate? Your Honor, don't you always claim to be fair and disciplined? Why is it that from the moment this trial started, you've only seen my lack of cooperation and focused on forcing me to admit fault? My son suffered a brain hemorrhage and a broken rib. He barely made it out of the ICU, yet now he's being framed as the abuser by the faked video. Can't you see that? The first time Leighton bullied Lenny, you said there wasn't enough evidence and delayed the trial. The second time, when he made Lenny kneel and slapped him, you called it a little roughhousing between boys. Is this what you call fairness? My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly across the courtroom. Evander's face turned pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. It was the first time he had ever been speechless in front of me. It was also the first time someone had publicly exposed his double standards and hypocrisy. Whispers started in the gallery, and people began looking at Evander with suspicion. The livestream comments paused for a moment before a few different voices trickled in. She kind of has a point. Mr. Ashton really has been siding with Tiana. Could there be more to the story? After all, the plaintiff's son was really badly hurt before. My lawyer, Darren Bates, seized the opportunity. He stepped forward, his voice firm. Your Honor, we formally request to change the defendant in this case again. If the court does not agree to change the defendant, the current evidence cannot fully reveal the truth or prove the harm suffered by my client and her child. We will claim insufficient evidence and apply to postpone the trial until complete evidence is collected. The words clearly stunned Evander. He never expected that I would use his own tactics against him. Evander gripped the gavel so hard his knuckles turned pale. He needed to end this trial now. The proceedings were venturing into dangerous territory. If this dragged on any longer, every secret he'd buried would be dragged out into the light. But he was cornered. Everyone in the courtroom was watching him, not to mention the hundreds of thousands tuning in on the live stream. Shutting this down would only make him look guilty. After a long, heavy silence, he took a breath and forced the words through clenched teeth. Permission granted to substitute the defendant. The moment he spoke, my lawyer, Darren, stepped forward, his voice booming. We request to amend our claim. We are suing Evander Ashton for adultery, abuse of power, using his position to shield a third party, and violating the legal rights of his own son. The courtroom erupted. Evander shot up from the bench, leveling a finger at me. Jocelyn, are you crazy? Do you have any idea what you're saying? The gallery dissolved into chaos. On the displays, the live stream comments scrolled by in a blur of shock and skepticism. What the hell? Cheating? Did I hear that right? With Mr. Ashton? Is she just desperate? Trying to drag him down? Mr. Ashton doesn't seem like that kind of guy. Look at the defendant's face, though. She's as pale as a ghost. It's definitely her. No wonder Ashton was always helping that woman. They're involved. That's disgusting. Every eye in the room shifted to Tiana. She sat in the defendant's chair, the blood completely drained from her face. I pointed right at her, enunciating every syllable. That's right. Evander's mistress is her. Tiana Shaw. Evander couldn't hold it together. He rushed down from the bench and grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully tight. Jocelyn, stop this. Tiana and I are just friends. We were high school classmates. I felt sorry for her raising a child on her own, so I helped her out. That's it. You're just angry and jealous, aren't you? Tell everyone the truth. Don't ruin our family. Don't make Lenny live with this shame. I yanked my hand away, a cold smile touching my lips. If you're so convinced your feelings for your former classmate are purely platonic, then let's show everyone exactly what you've been up to. I pulled out my phone and handed it to Darren to connect to the courtroom's projection system. Moments later, the large screen lit up with the footage I'd filmed at the hospital. It showed Evander, Tiana, and Leighton looking exactly like a happy, loving family. Next, Darren pulled up Evander's bank statements. They clearly showed that over the past 3 years, he had transferred nearly $200,000 to Tiana. The memos varied. Some were labeled as living expenses, others for Leighton's tuition. There were even payments for designer bags. Finally, I had Darren pull up screenshots of our chat history, putting Tiana's taunts on full display. Van has only ever loved me. You're just a wife in name only. He doesn't even want to touch you. Don't you feel pathetic? Whatever Lay wants, Van buys for him. But your son? When he got hurt, Van wouldn't even stand up for him. He's just an unloved bastard, exactly like you. The evidence was undeniable. A heavy silence suffocated the room. A few seconds later, the gallery exploded, and the tide in the live stream turned completely. The people who had been trashing me were now tearing into Evander and Tiana. That is absolutely revolting. Ignoring his own son for a mistress? Watching his kid get bullied. What a hypocrite. I thought he was an upstanding guy, but it was all an act. I feel so bad for the plaintiff and her son. 10 years of this? Living with such a cold-blooded man while watching him treat another woman like that. Evander stood frozen, his face gray, his posture screaming defeat. Tiana slumped in her chair, tears streaming down her face. But this time, there was no sympathy. The room looked at her with nothing but contempt. The crowd was entirely on my side now. Evander, get down from that bench. You don't deserve to be a judge. You aren't worthy. That woman is vile, wrecking a family while acting so innocent. Now we see her true colors. They need to go down for this. Scum like that should be fired and thrown in prison. Tiana snapped. She scrambled up from her chair, looking frantic. It's fake. All of this is fake. You forged this evidence. You're framing us just to win the lawsuit. Van and I are innocent. Don't slander us. Evander shook off his daze and immediately chimed in. Right, she forged it. The evidence is fake. Don't believe her. Just then, the heavy courtroom doors swung open. Several uniformed officials marched in. Their expressions were stern, their steps synchronized as they walked straight toward Evander. The leader held up his credentials, his tone icy. Evander, we've received a formal whistleblower report. You are suspected of abusing your authority, acting for personal gain, and shielding individuals who have harmed a minor. Please come with us for questioning. Evander's knees buckled, and he would have hit the floor if a bailiff hadn't grabbed his arm to hold him up. He tried to stammer out an explanation, to argue his case, but the officers ignored him. They slapped the handcuffs on his wrists. The click of the cold metal made Evander shiver. He stared at the cuffs, his eyes empty, muttering to himself. I didn't. It's slander. Impossible. I did nothing wrong. The hearing is postponed. A new date will be set. With that statement hanging in the air, the officers marched Evander out. As they passed me, Evander stopped and locked eyes with me. His expression was a mess of anger, resentment, and something else I couldn't quite name. He opened his mouth to speak, but in the end, His lips just moved silently before the officers shoved him forward. Soon after, the news broke online. Evander was under investigation and had been removed from his post. The reputation and honors he had built over a lifetime were destroyed in a heartbeat. Internet sleuths dug up the old high school scandal involving him and Tiana, along with proof that he had been pulling strings for her for years. Their names became top trending topics, and the comment sections were brutal. The court reconvened a week later. This time, without Evander's protection, the evidence was undeniable. Leighton was sent to a juvenile detention center. Tiana not only lost her job as a judicial assistant, but was also fined for perjury and falsifying video evidence to frame someone. Her reputation was in tatters. People pointed and whispered wherever she went. Someone even threw animal blood at her front door, calling her a mistress and a homewrecker. With nowhere else to turn, she came to my home. She stopped me at the entrance to the complex, dropped to her knees, and wailed, "Ms. Rowe, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Please beg the judge to let Lay go. He's just a kid. He can't handle detention." I looked down at her, my voice ice cold. "If you want to beg, go find Evander in prison. He's the one who spoiled you until you thought you were above the law. He's the one who neglected his own son to play hero for you. You should be begging him, not me." I walked past her and into the complex, shutting out her screaming and pleading. After a detailed investigation by the prosecutor's office, the charges, abuse of power, adultery, and shielding criminals, were all proven true. The court sentenced Evander to 3 years in prison. All his titles were revoked, and his name was struck from the rolls. Before his sentence began, he asked a prison staff member to contact he wanted to see Leon and me one last time, even if just for 10 minutes. I hesitated for a long time. Eventually, I looked at Leon and nodded. I wanted Leon to see his father's true nature for himself, so he would stop holding out hope. At the prison, Evander sat behind the thick glass in a uniform. In just 1 month, his hair had gone significantly gray, and deep lines had etched themselves into his face. He looked haggard, stripped of the imposing dignity he used to have as a judge. I looked at him like he was a complete stranger. For a moment, it seemed the spirited, successful Evander I remembered had been nothing but a fantasy. Stripped of that fantasy, he was just an incredibly hypocritical man. As soon as he saw me, his eyes turned red. His voice came through the receiver, hoarse and broken. "Josie, I know I was wrong. I really do. I wasn't trying to falsely accuse you, and Lenny falsely. I felt guilty because Tiana was criticized and expelled from high school because of. It's not easy for her to raise a child alone, and I just wanted to help her a little to make up for the past. I really don't have feelings for her anymore, I promise. The truth is, I fell in love with you years ago. I just didn't dare admit it. Can you believe me just this once? I know I treated you badly. I was cold to you. But you were always in my heart. Otherwise, why would I have stayed with you for 10 years? I listened quietly, feeling nothing. 10 years of coldness. 10 years of neglect. He had protected others while Leon was bullied. He had slandered me in court. Those wounds were like scars on Leon and me. How could they disappear just because he said, "I love you," or "I was wrong"? I didn't say a word. I just looked at him coldly. Seeing I wasn't speaking, Evander turned his gaze to Leon. His tone became gentle, desperate. "Lenny, Dad was wrong. I know I didn't treat you right, and I never should have played favorites or let you go through all that. When I get out, I'll make it up to you. I'll take you to the amusement park and buy you those Transformers you like best. I'll help you with homework every day. Will you forgive Dad this one time?" Leon frowned and hid behind me, his small hand gripping the hem of my shirt. His eyes held no dependence, only deep dislike. He stared right at Evander, his voice clear and loud. "You aren't a good dad. You hurt Moni, and you hurt me. Mom doesn't need you. I don't need a dad like you." Evander froze. The hope in his eyes vanished. Tears ran down his cheeks. He opened his mouth to speak, but ultimately just moved his lips in vain, unable to get a word out. I held Leon's hand and stood up. The love I once felt was gone, leaving only a simple declaration. Evander, we're even now. I turned and walked away without looking back. Outside the prison gates, the sunlight hit us. I took a deep breath, feeling like the heavy weight of the last 10 years had finally lifted. 2 weeks later, the divorce decree arrived. I had successfully divorced Evander. Since he was the party at fault, the court ruled that he would leave with nothing. I didn't hesitate to sell our house. It was filled with 10 years of grievances and pain, and I didn't want to keep any reminders. I took Leon to a new city in the south, where the weather was warm and the air was fresh. I used the money from the house to buy a small apartment. It wasn't big, but it was cozy. I found a new elementary school for Leon. He adapted quickly, making new friends and smiling more. The timidness and insecurity he used to show were gone. After school, he would hold my hand and chatter about funny things that happened in class. He would hug my neck and say, "Mom, I'm so happy." Seeing Leon happy made me feel relieved and warm inside. The past 10 years had been a long, painful ordeal. Now that suffering had finally ended, the sun was bright and the breeze was gentle. I held Leon's hand as we walked along the path home, listening to his clear laughter. I knew our new life had just begun. The end.